and welcome back to yet another exciting week of the Lazy Money Game. In this week's episode, we are going to talk about wealth, and in particularly wealth in Denmark, since there is now a new report published from CEPOS, so you can go and see how wealthy you are compared to people at your own age, or rather at people from the age ranging from 18 years old and all the way up to 90. If you are a returning viewer to this channel, then you might say, well, haven't you made a video about this previously? And you are actually quite correct, since the last video I made in 2020 on the 27th of December was actually with exact same topic, because there I had the report from last year. So this time I'm trying to compare some of the differences, and you can see how the wealth has actually developed for these categories, meaning either if you are in the bottom 10%, in the bottom 25%, or if you are at the median, or at the top 25%, or the top 10%, or the top 5%, or even at the top 1%. So the last time when I made this comparison, you could see that the value of my portfolio was $91,000. So that meant that I was actually not even in the top 1% if I were just 18 years old. Well, how does it look if we take a look at the report today? So if we start by looking at the report today, now you can see that the 18-year-olds have increased their fortune by more than 100,000. But at the same time, if you take a look at my portfolio, it has increased to $167,000, which is roughly 1,090,000 Danish. So this year I can actually measure up as top 1% if I was 20-year-old. So this means, since I have invested so much into my portfolio over the year, I have now managed to increase my wealth quite significantly. And this just becomes much more obvious if you compare to the median instead of comparing yourself to the top 1%. Because last year my portfolio was around 550,000, which meant that I would be in the median if I was 38 years old. But I mean, this year I have actually moved up, so I could be at the age between 46 and 47 and had around the median if you just look at my portfolio. Another thing which I always find to be quite fascinating is to say, how about the most wealthy people in the country? Well, last year it would take a fortune of a little more than 14.2 million to make it into the top 1%, and that was for the age group of 72-year-olds. Well, how does that measure up with this year? If we then scroll all the way down, then we will see that it's actually the age group of 73-year-olds, and they have managed to accumulate a fortune of close to 16 million, meaning that they have actually increased the wealth by more than 2 million for the top 1%. But I mean, it has also been an amazing year in the stock market, so it's not too surprising to see that the overall wealth has increased quite significantly. Another thing that really stands out when you look to a table like this is the snowball effect. If we, for instance, look at the bottom 25%, well, from the age of 18 and all the way up to 28, they have only managed to accumulate an additional 2,000 kroner in wealth. But if you compare that to the top 1%, well, they have almost managed to increase their wealth by 1.3 million over the same 10 years. So you can see that it is much easier for the top 1% to accumulate their wealth. This is of course not surprising, because what are the wealthy doing? They are putting their money into assets that gain in value, compared to people who has to spend the majority of their money to simply just live. And if we just take my portfolio as an example once again, what I like to do is to compare my portfolio to the different brackets. So last year, for instance, I had a wealth of around 590,000 Danish kroner. So at that point, I was actually richer than the bottom 1% over all the age groups, and it would have put me into the 50-year-olds for the bottom 25%. But with the amount of wealth that I have managed to accumulate this year, well, now the value of my portfolio actually surpasses even the wealthiest of the bottom 25%. But as you can see here, to go from the bottom 25% and go to the medium, that would require more than an additional million. So there is a lot of work to do if I want to move the portfolio up to a higher level here. So that is what I would continue to do going forward. If we then continue to my portfolio, well, the first thing we immediately notice is that there's a green circle for this week's episode, meaning that the portfolio is up in value compared to last week. If you go to the portfolio values tab, however, you can see that the portfolio has stayed flat in value. This is because I don't include the last digits. But if you're looking closer at them, you can see that the value has actually increased with a small dollar amount. So I thought it was the most appropriate to add a green circle for this week's episode. At the same time, you can see that the cost has not moved, and if we go back to the overview, you can still see that I have a little more than $4,000 in cash, so I haven't bought or sold anything within this week. If we then scroll to the top of the portfolio here, just to give you a complete overview, well, there's actually not a lot to talk about here, since some of the stock has moved up, some of the stock has moved down. There haven't been any major movements in the stocks that I have in the portfolio. If we go to my favorites tab, namely the dividends tab, well, nothing has happened within this week. I haven't received a single dividend, but I know that I'm going to receive much more before the end of November. So we will simply just have to wait until next Sunday to see any major movements there. But for some of you who are returning viewers to my channel, you might recall that I sold Disney last year when it was trading at around 170, and I said that I believed the stock was quite overvalued at that point. Well, if you take a look at Disney within this week, you can see that the stock has dropped a little more than 9%. So now it's actually trading below the value at which I sold it at. I know that if you look at the 1-year graph, I could have sold it with an even bigger profit of around 200. So this is just to show you once again an example that stocks may stay overvalued for a long time, they might stay undervalued for a long time. I really have to remind myself about the stock market is a way of transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient, so I need to stay patient. So now that you have once again seen how you can compare your wealth to other people, at least in Denmark, that sums it up for yet another exciting week of the Lazy Money Game. So if you enjoy content like this, then please remember to comment, like or subscribe. It really helps out the channel a lot. And until I see you next time, bye!